Good evening and welcome. Thanks for joining us wherever you are in the country and around the world. You are in part one of the 7-part webinar series, Look into BC, put on by the Student Admissions Program, produced by the one and only Jackie Geller. And we're trying to highlight different aspects of life at Boston College. A year ago, this was all we did. We used the virtual platform to talk about every aspect we could about Boston College. But now that things are starting to open up and we've been able to host a lot of visits on campus. I'm actually talking to you from a very plain hotel in the suburbs of Chicago since I've been out on the recruiting trail. We're not doing as much general information on our virtual platform. What we're doing is picking out very specific things that really add value and add life to understanding what Boston College is all about. Tonight, we're looking at something that's very dear to a lot of us at Boston College, our Jesuit heritage. And in particular, we're talking today about faith, retreats, and service. And I would think that of the people that are joining us and are watching this video that's been recorded, you come at it from two categories. One is that when you're looking at colleges, this is a part of the college experience that you really value. You have faith and you want it to be deepened and strengthened and perhaps challenged. Retreats and service may have been part of your spiritual life at your church, or maybe in your high school if it's a religious affiliated high school. And this is something that you want to have as your vision of college and a college experience. Or you like everything about BC, but you can't wrap your head around the fact that we're Catholic, we're Jesuit, and that things like faith, retreats, and service are very important parts of what life is like at Boston College. So you like so much about Boston College, and this is a part that intrigues you, it interests you, or at the very least, you need to understand if you want to join Boston College and really live Boston College to the fullest, because I think of the people that are on this call, all of my guests that are with us from different parts of campus, feel that it adds value to their experience at Boston College when it comes to faith, retreats, and service. You see, I've assembled a panel of experts. Wait till you hear from them. They've been saving wisdom up for months in order to give it to you today. And I'll also be able to welcome a few questions. You can use the Q&A function on the Zoom platform, and you can send in some questions. Jackie, our producer, is going to help us behind the scenes, and we'll try to get some of them tonight if we can help you understand this element of Boston College. First, introductions are in order. So to get everybody started, I'm going to pick on everybody to do an introduction. We'll start with Grace Carlson. I've known Grace for a long time, and she's volunteered in our office. So Grace, if you could talk a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what you study. And in particular, as you finish your introduction, talk a little bit about these subjects, the subject of faith and retreats and service, and if they were forefront in your mind when you were looking at colleges, or has it just been a coincidence that you've gone to a school and these things were all in existence? So let's hear about you, and let's hear you answer that question.
Thanks, Chris. And thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. I know we're excited to kind of share on this topic. It's something we're all really passionate about. My name is Grace. I am a senior, which is crazy. It feels like just the other day I was in your shoes looking at BC, being excited about all these opportunities. I am studying finance and information systems in the Carroll School of Management, and I'm minoring in theology in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences. I'm originally from Lafayette, California. And when I was looking at colleges, I actually only applied to Catholic colleges. It was something I was really passionate about. And I knew outside of just my own religious background, going to a Catholic high school, I really enjoyed a lot of those formative experiences that came with going to a religious school, such as retreats and service and campus ministry. And that was something I was really looking for coming into college. And I really found that at Boston College.
Great, thanks, Grace. Now, John, I'll turn to you, and let's hear a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what you study. Grace really set the bar very high. But for you to finish your introduction, I want you to talk a little bit about how students, when they come into Boston College, learn about these kind of things. What we'll learn about tonight is there are several opportunities, clubs, organizations, activities that highlight retreats and highlight service. How does someone who walks in the door at Boston College learn about these things? And how did you particularly learn about these things as you joined us?
Hi, thank you all for coming out. My name is John Khalil. I'm from California, right outside San Francisco. I'm a sophomore in the Carroll School of Management studying economics, also like Grace, with a minor in theology. So in terms of kind of learning about the opportunities that campus ministry provides, I actually watched this same webinar, but the version before my freshman year. I believe Grace and Chris were both in that one. And so that was very helpful. And then once I arrived on campus, I heard through Grace about some opportunities with a group called Christian Life Community that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later tonight. But also through the campus activities fair, I found a lot of other groups. And then usually different groups will come to speak at the various religious services on campus. So really it's a great place to find all these different opportunities for spiritual and religious engagement.
Fantastic. Thanks, John. And Grace, another satisfied viewer of our programming. We should package these and maybe put out a DVD box set of them all. Christine, let's learn about you. And one thing I do know about you, Christine, is not only did you go to a Catholic school, but you went to a Jesuit high school, one of my favorite Jesuit high schools in the country. So I want to ask you about what you can put your finger on some of the differences between the way, if there are differences in the way these subjects are talked about at the high school level and the way that you've seen them talked about on the college level in your experience. Maybe there is a difference, maybe there's not. I think I'd like to hear your take on it. So let's meet Christine.
Yeah, of course, Chris. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Christine Lenahan. I'm a junior in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, studying English and philosophy with a minor in women and gender studies. I'm originally from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yes, like The Office. Yes, like Joe Biden. Yes, like Scranton Prep. That was my Jesuit high school that I went to. If we got any fellow Jesuit high schoolers in the crowd right now, or any prep students, go Cavs. But I can speak a little bit to kind of how my Jesuit education in high school has informed my Jesuit education here at Boston College. And the two of them are definitely very different. I have found that in my high school, we talked a lot about these Jesuit values. We throw around a lot of Latin phrases. The Jesuits love their Latin. We'll talk about that probably a little bit later in this panel as well. And I was familiar with the idea of like Ignatian spirituality and what it means to be reflective and to discern things, to take a step back at your life and look at where God or whatever religious figure you kind of identify with or look to falls into your life, and where those kind of conversations can lead. But I felt as though the conversations didn't happen in as much depth as they do on Boston College's campus. Students love to talk about their faith and spirituality, no matter what their faith or spiritual background is, whether they're super strong in it, whether they're questioning it day in and day out. They want to engage in that kind of conversation. And so I feel like Boston College has really helped me in that way to put what I knew in high school to the test and engage in those conversations on campus and beyond.
Fantastic. Sounds like I asked the right question, Christine. Well done. Thank you. Last but not least is a member of the campus ministry team, Kelly Hughes, someone who's been at, well, hey, you could do the introduction, Kelly. You can tell us how long you've been at Boston College, but I've certainly known your work for several years. So if you can introduce yourself and not just your role in campus ministry, but what you feel, how you interpret the mission of campus ministry at Boston College. What are you there for? What are you providing both as individuals and as an office?
Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks so much for all of you joining and for our wonderful students here speaking to their experience. You can see why I think I have the best job in the world, because these are the students I get to work with every single day. Campus ministry for me, I will say, in my own time applying for colleges and thinking about it, I didn't even know what a campus minister was. So here I am about to introduce myself as a campus minister. And I just want to normalize, if you don't know what that is okay. So I'm Kelly Hughes. I've been a campus minister at Boston College now. I'm on my 5th year. I worked my first 3 years with the APA Volunteers Domestic Service Immersion Program, and now I'm the campus minister for retreats. So I definitely am here for this conversation because these are all the things that I love. But what I would say campus ministry is in the life of a Jesuit Catholic university, it's another piece for students to integrate all of their experiences, their academic experience, their social experience, but their spiritual one as well. So we're the explicit place to bring the spiritual experience, whether you're coming into college with that or not, into your full person. Cura personalis is another one of those Latin phrases that Christina alluded to. But in thinking about Jesuit education of the whole person, we're attentive to the spiritual side as well as the other pieces as well. So we get to walk alongside students as they discover that on their own path.
That's what a great answer. And thanks, Kelly. We appreciate what you do and how you do it. You guys did a great introduction and we talked about some basic concepts. I just want to dig a little bit deeper and I'll go back to you, Grace. Do you feel like after a couple of years at Boston College, your faith is stronger or different than it was when you came in? And if so, is there anything that you can point to, a class, a conversation, a person that you feel sort of changed direction or made your faith a little bit deeper?
Totally. I think it's interesting because I came into Boston College with what I thought was a very strong and unchanging faith that I'd kind of stick with throughout the rest of my life. And coming to Boston College made me realize how much more room there was to grow in my faith. I think coming in, I came with a very structured mindset, and Boston College really opened my eyes to a lot of the more, like Kelly was mentioning, care of the whole person, how my religious views should be impacting like how I interact with other people, how I interact with the world once I leave Boston College, how I take care of myself. And I think one of the most formative experiences of me realizing that has been my time with Christian Life Community, which John mentioned. I'm fortunate this year to be one of the presidents. And it's just such an amazing group to be able to come together once a week and just have conversations with people. I think it's hard, Chris, because you asked me to pinpoint one conversation or one person, but it's been just so many conversations over my 4 years here, where little by little, I'm just hearing a new perspective of how somebody else views God, or I'm hearing a new way to pray, or just a new way to learn about myself, which I love. And just kind of having that throughout my time here at BC has been phenomenal. It's definitely opened my eyes to a lot of different ways that faith can manifest for different people. And I feel like my relationship with my own spirituality is a lot stronger for it.
Great point, Grace. And I'll turn to you, Christine, because you're the one that brought up all these conversations as well that you have with people about your faith. What are the conversations like with people of different faiths? What are the conversations like with people that are questioning their faith? Are those tough conversations, interesting conversations, important conversations? I mean, I'm sure amongst your friends, there's a wide variety of where people are in terms of spirituality, whether they have a religious tradition or not. Tell me about those conversations. What are those conversations like for you?
Yeah, of course, Chris. I can point to two distinct ones that I feel like in my mind, this is when I think of a faith-based conversation. And then the ways in which those conversations have like led me to question more. First would be my freshman year. I walked into office hours with one of my professors. We were reading the Bible from a philosophical lens. We were talking about the book of Job. I walked into her office, Professor Carrie Cronin, and I said to her, I don't understand why Job is damned. And like, we're having this conversation and she stops in the middle of it and says, Christine, why do you believe one word of this book? And it caught me so off guard that I didn't know that a professor would ever ask something that deeply personal of a student. But I'm so thankful to this day that she did, because that really caused me to question, why do I believe in what I claim to believe in? Like, what is that rooted in? And this very educated woman was willing to have that conversation with me. And she didn't have to. It's not like a part of the curriculum, like to like question students about their faith. She just wanted to. And it was really wonderful. Not only was my question answered about what I went in to talk to her about, but I was left with even more questions, which led to even more fruitful conversations, which then leads me to my next conversation that I had, which was with another student who's of Muslim faith. And this was actually on a campus retreat, a retreat called Kairos, which we'll talk hopefully a little bit more about later on the panel. During Kairos, we have a special activity where we pray together. And any person of any faith background is welcome to join this retreat, as well as pray in a manner that's like fitting to them. And after the student, Rakib, who has since graduated, prayed in community among us, holding hands together, we had a really intensive conversation about the ways in which he feels his Muslim identity is manifested on this campus. So much so that I was invited to be his +1 to a Muslim Student Association meeting, which of course I felt like as a person who's Catholic, I didn't know if I would necessarily feel a sense of belonging in those meetings, but I most certainly did. So those are two distinct conversations that I've had regarding faith with professors and then with students.
Those are, well, great examples, Christine. Thank you. And maybe to round the conversation off, I'll turn to you, Kelly, and I'm sure that you have conversations with students about faith. And I'd be curious to know, do you think those conversations that you have with students come out of a crisis, or they come out of curiosity? Just because it's, again, such a big deal at Boston College. These conversations, like Christine mentioned and Grace mentioned, happen a lot. So when you get the conversation and they're having a conversation with an adult at BC, are these conversations because people are at a crossroads or are challenged? Or do you think they're people that are sort of from outside of religious tradition and they're really curious about what Christine, what Grace, what all these people are talking about in terms of faith and tradition?
I think I would just say yes, Chris, all of those. I think this is, to put it in the context here, that this is the time of your life between 18 and 22 when a student's asking questions like, who am I? What am I going to do with my life? And you bring in this figure of God or the divine, a religious background, a spiritual a practice. And how does that fit into this big question of who am I? And what do I want to be here at Boston College, but also what do I want to be, as Grace said, after, beyond it? So I do think I've seen a number of those situations with students. My role is really one of accompaniment and support in whatever religious tradition or no religious background a student may bring. So whether that might be answering questions of curiosity, of asking a little bit more, what is the service thing? What is a retreat? And why does everyone keep talking about it? Or it's, I am facing a really tough situation with my family. I've experienced a death. The experience of COVID has impacted us all so much. And so what does this faith tradition that I've been brought up into say back to my experience? And I think college then becomes this time where your faith might have been connected with your family, might have been connected with a school, but it really becomes this experience of, what does this mean for me? What is this God trying to do to invite me, encounter me, love me right here, right now? And how am I integrating that into my everyday life at Boston College? So all of that to say, yes, we see all of it and more come across our doors in campus ministry.
Makes total sense. And I knew you were going to say both, Kelly. I knew it. I just knew you were going to say both. So well done. Thank you. But faith, we'll talk about programs and we'll talk about events and retreats that bring a lot of our community together. But John, you've even seen early in your career, just your faith has brought you to an organization where you've met a lot of different people and you probably made some great friends and networking right off the bat because of your participation in this organization. Tell us about some of the people you've met and how that may have eased your transition to BC.
Yeah, so I'm actually in two different campus ministry organizations. So the first is called Christian Life Community. It's a global organization, but we operate small groups on campus for faith sharing and reflection. And so it's a really great place every week to have an hour to kind of reflect. I've met some of my best friends and had some of my most meaningful conversations on campus through CLC. And I'm also a member of Knights of Columbus, which is a Catholic men's group on campus. And that's also great. Whereas CLC is kind of inclusive of all different religions, kind of that Ignatian spirituality. With Knights of Columbus, I get to engage very specifically with my Catholic spirituality. And so that's also great. So we have retreats and we meet for Mass often. And so in both of those organizations, I've been able to connect with my faith on multiple different levels with people who are my age. Because growing up, most of the people at my parish were a lot older than I was. And so it's been nice to be at Boston College to engage with my faith and with people who are my same age, that I can kind of see myself in their faith journey as well, and see how they approach things at sort of the same stage in their life that I am. That's great.
That's great. I get it. And I don't take offense. I'm probably one of those old people like my vintage in your parish that you don't relate to. Totally fine. We throw the word around a retreat like it's barbecue, like it's something that's universal that everybody gets. But I understand that there might be people tuning in that aren't as familiar with the term and aren't as familiar with the function. I know I went to Boston College High School. I was introduced to a Kairos retreat and retreats very early in my career, and came to appreciate what that meant for me personally and what that meant as a group when we were able to do that together. But I'll turn to Kelly for, I don't know if it's a definition, but maybe sort of from either campus ministry's point of view, your experience's point of view. Again, give us like this bigger view of what the purpose of a retreat is, and maybe connected to what our traditions are at a Jesuit Catholic school in terms of a retreat.
Happy to, Chris. I think looking at the man of St. Ignatius, who is the founder of the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits, the heritage that we claim at Boston College. For St. Ignatius, it was about God in all things, which really is God in my experience. And so thinking about not God in this only certain this experience, this boxed off time on a Sunday morning or at this class, but if God is in all of my experience, then what other experiences might I seek to encounter God? So a retreat is really the word, what it means to leave, to step away from BC, but to have a more full, a more abundant experience of encountering that God who seeks to encounter all of us. So a retreat can look a lot of different ways at Boston College. One retreat definition does not fit all, but from what we do here in campus ministry, a retreat is a chance to go off with your peers, like John said, how important that is, to take a weekend away, an overnight, even something as short as an hour or a couple hours of a mini retreat, but to leave campus or find a quiet, reflective space on campus to have conversation, much like we alluded to earlier, to have time for prayer and reflection, to slow down from the busy campus life that I'm sure so many of you out there are living in high school, and it continues in college too. But a retreat being in this intentional space set away, but at the same time coming to a more connected, clear understanding of who am I? These questions we said earlier. Who is this God, and what is this God saying to me? And how is this community of faith going to continue to support me when I return back to Boston College at the end of the retreat?
A beautiful definition that covers it. And many organizations, programs, campus ministry, probably preeminent among them, but many offices, organizations have employed the retreat. Grace, your freshman year, maybe you participated in 48 hours, which is right at the beginning of your freshman year. Here you're introduced to what retreats are. Do you remember 48 hours, Grace?
I do, very clearly. We went to somewhere on the Cape. So we were at a hotel on the water. We went to the beach during it. I do remember more of the reflective aspects as well. But 48 hours is a retreat put on for the freshmen by the first year experience office. And like the name suggests, you are away for a weekend with other freshmen. And I absolutely loved that retreat because it almost felt like a crash course into reflection and vulnerability and having meaningful conversations with other freshmen. It was a great way to meet new people. I went, I think, October of my freshman year. So I was still kind of getting the hang of things, still meeting people. It was a great way to make new friends because it had a lot of social elements. And it was also so nice to just kind of, like Kelly was saying, retreat away from Boston College and just take a pause on the homework and the, the roommates and all of that, and just kind of have a break. And I think all of my friends went on it our freshman year, and we all had really great experiences.
And that was a tricky way to introduce first year students into the concept of retreat. And then they learn about some of the other major programs that involve reflection. The Jesuits believe in reflection, taking some time away, as Kelly said, processing things and finding some peace. And some people that are viewing this might be familiar with, in their high school or in their community, the Kairos retreat. And that's something, a big part of the Boston College culture. Christine, I know this is something that's near and dear to your heart. So without betraying too many of the great parts of the retreat itself, maybe you can talk a little bit about what that experience is like and how that's taken hold at Boston College and the culture and in the community.
Yeah, of course, Chris. I love to talk about Kairos because I can't really tell you much about Kairos. It is kind of shrouded in some secrecy, but it's better to label that secrecy as surprises rather than making it like some scary, mysterious thing. Kairos, in its simple definition, is a word that means God's time, but it is so much more than that. It's a time, again, it's a retreat and where we step away from campus. We go to our retreat center owned by Boston College in Dover, Massachusetts for a weekend, in which we kind of come together as a BC community and step away from our lives as students and into our lives as people, if that makes any sense. We are able to really express a vulnerability in who we are and realize that we have all had really like concretely shared experiences, however they've manifested in different ways, that our struggles kind of all relate to one another, and that we all are here together in this community to support each other through that, and then to ground those and find reason and meaning in those in our faith. Kairos has been one of the most formative experiences of my Boston College career. We have the largest Kairos program in the nation. I was a leader of a Kairos program, Kairos 203, which is the 203rd Kairos that BC ran, which is absolutely wild. I know that like I had prior knowledge about Kairos. It's a very Jesuit thing when I had done it in my high school. But for people who don't know, you enter into a lottery system. That's kind of how like intense the program is. A lot of people want to do it, partially because they want to know what these great secrets are of it, or these great surprises, I should say. But that you enter into a lottery system and you are randomly called on the retreat. So you'll get an email, you've been selected for Kairos, and then you'll get to go on your designated weekend. It's really a huge honor. It's a huge celebration. I know among the community, whether you have a strong faith background or not, we are welcoming of any and all faith traditions. As I had that anecdote before about like the shared prayer, there's so many special moments on the retreat. It's really just one of the best parts, I think, about campus ministry and life at BC in general.
I was the leader of K35, Christine. So the fact that you're 203, I mean, that really hits home to me. So boy, that's a lot of Kairoses or Kairi or whatever it is. Kelly, I don't know if you've had any experience with Halftime, which was a retreat that I've been on 9 times in my career at BC. Which is not as much a faith retreat, but certainly a vocational discernment retreat where we can use some concepts from our Jesuit heritage to find out. It's kind of like if you guys are athletes, it's like you know how your coach gives you the halftime speech because your team sucks in the first half, and you're trying to motivate to get the most out of your team in the second half, and halftime isn't like just people yelling at you for like 3 days, but it's trying to make a game plan to win the second half, to win the game, and to get the most out of the game that you can. And we talk a lot at the halftime retreat about, you know, some major questions that are used a lot at Boston College when we're all trying to find out what is the social responsibility that comes with being so smart and having these resources and having these great friends that you all are so lucky to have. And we talk about, you know, finding the things that we're really good at and not being embarrassed about the things that we're really good at, having pride in them. And then finding the things that make us happy, not just like a surface happy, but like a deep like joy that we really, really experience deeply. And then hopefully you find out that the world needs you to perform these kind of things. The intersection of those 3 things should be able to inform you about where you can go after college that is going to be fulfilling. I mean, all of us want you to make $1 million, and all of us want you to live in the cul-de-sac and have what it is that you want. But is it fulfilling? Is it socially responsible? Is it true to your faith? Is it true to all those things? And I take halftime and all the time that I've been on, and I really think that students can wrap their heads around some of these ideas because we can go away for a couple of days, and because we can put organic chemistry and we can put financial accounting aside and have those conversations. And I've noticed it's Kairos, it's halftime, it's 48 hours. But Kelly, I also see a lot of other organizations and events utilize the retreat for their leadership, for staff. I mean, maybe you've seen it from your view that the retreat craze has sort of filtered into a lot of different aspects of life. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have. And I think it's great. I think that a retreat is not just something to be meant for a campus ministry program or group, but that to bring these Jesuit values to life in all facets of the university. I am here for it, as the kids would say. I am thinking of our multi-faith retreat. So bringing together students of our different multi-faith organizations. So bringing together our Muslim Student Association, our Hillel, our Asian Christian Fellowship. So really creating spaces where faith can be shared and celebrated. I'm thinking of retreats for leaders. I used to work with the APA program, and we would have retreats before the year would start. We'd have a retreat right before the spring break service trips, and having a similar locker room feel. It was a time to say, okay, put the books away. We are here together. God is with us. And how can we remind ourselves in this community of faith and of service of what we're about to enter into? So retreats in leadership, as well as retreats with colleagues to build these friendships, have these meaningful conversations that get through some of the logistics, the transactional stuff, the meeting agenda items. A retreat really sets an intentionality and reminds us of who we are at Boston College and why that is our most important part, our mission. And from that, everything else we do emanates. And I'm thinking of the words of Pedro Arrupe, to fall in love with God, to stay in love, it determines everything else. And so reminding ourselves of that mission on a retreat can really animate everything else that we do.
Well, Kelly, if you bring up Pedro Arrupe, that's kind of like, that's the final word on that. No one can sort of come over the top on Pedro Arrupe. Well done. So I have to change and transition to the next subject, which is very fitting because we talk about faith, we talk about retreats, and we're going to talk about service. Now, we have to be careful when we talk about service because it's not just the Catholic faith and it's not just Jesuit students that do service. It's for many cases, a lot of you that are joining us and have shown this generosity of spirit in your high school careers, in your maybe all your life in your town or in your boys club and all these other civic organizations. So service transcends it all, but certainly service in solidarity with others, service that allows you to do some reflection on some of these bigger questions. Service does have a faith component, so we certainly should talk about that. And I guess I'll turn to you, John, since you're the closest to it. Was service a big part of your high school career? And as you came to college, did you come to college intent on finding opportunities to get involved in service programs that might help you sort things out, or that brought you the same joy that brought you in high school? Or did you just do the service to get into college? You could be honest with me because you're in now. If that's why you did it, you could just come clean. Or maybe there's a bigger reason why service was something that you may have done in high school.
So I went to a public high school. Service was admittedly not a big part of my high school career. I did do a lot of work with basically little kids in sports. So I would go and I would coach little kids in various sports. And it also admittedly has not been a big part so far of my college career, although I do have a lot of friends who are very engaged in various service opportunities around campus.
Well, that's why we have you on the call. We're going to force you into more service opportunities as the year goes on. You must know about them all.
I do know about a lot of them.
Yes. Christine, the same question. The service culture at Boston College can loom very large, and a lot of the premier clubs, organizations have service elements in them. Is that how you've met a lot of your friends, through service? Is that how you navigate through and get to know a lot of the culture of Boston College through some of these major service organizations that, again, loom pretty large in the culture and the community at BC?
Yeah, of course, Chris. I mean, I think when we look at it from a statistical standpoint, it's like 70% or so of Boston College students will do some form of service over their 4 years here at BC. And that's a statistic that we're really proud of. And it makes a lot of sense. It's what we're kind of meant to do here as students. One of our BC phrases is men and women, human beings for others. The way in which that we are supposed to take what we learn in the classroom, the knowledge and everything that we get here at BC, and bring it out to the world at large. A Jesuit education is supposed to supersede the boundaries of the classroom and take it out into the larger community as a whole. And that's really what service does super directly. My knowledge of service coming from a Jesuit high school was that service only existed in service trips. That you had to be in a different state or in a different country, and you had to be like wearing cargo shorts and living in a tent or doing something like that. And that was service. There you were, and then you were doing it. BC has like totally like transformed that notion of service for me. Again, because a lot of my service, or at least I'd say my favorite form of service that I do right now, happens within the BC community as a whole. I'm part of the English language learners program, in which I'm able to engage in conversations in English with either administrators or faculty here at BC, or like part of the staff team whose language is not, or primary language is not English. And so really it is a conversation. Actually, a lot of the conversations we end up having are about faith a lot of the time. It's easy to go over English words that you hear in churches or that are like used in faith-based conversations. And so through that service form, I'm also able to tap into the faith as well. And I've met so many wonderful people throughout that program. And then again, all of my friends at BC also participate in service programs, each in different ones, which is really nice, because right now, if you can hear them like all chattering in the background, which I don't know, I can, they're all at the dinner table. And a lot of the time when we sit down, we talk about the different service experiences that we've had, whether that be right down the street at the Carroll School of the Blind, in a different country, serving with the APA volunteers in the Appalachia region of the United States, whatever it might be. So people come from such a rich diversity of experiences, and then we're able to engage in conversation about them as well.
Grace, give me the heavy hitters. Give me the big name volunteer associations at Boston College. So if people want to get to know students that are wired like them, if people want to continue some of the service they've done in high school, what are the big ones? You know, send these soon to be freshmen that are joining us. What are some of the big associations that people recognize at BC for their service?
So the two big ones that come to mind for me are the APA Volunteers Program, or just APA, as you may have heard us talking about before, which are trips that take place over our spring break in March. It started out just in the Appalachia region, but has since expanded to, I think, I remember the year I did it, they had a trip going to Puerto Rico. I'm not sure if it's still that expansive, but kind of going all over. And we really immerse ourselves in whatever community we're with for that week. I was fortunate enough my freshman year to go on a community trip to Hurley, Virginia. That was, again, one of my most formative experiences. I made some of my closest friends today that I still talk to probably at least every week. I'm actually seeing a bunch of them on Sunday, which is exciting, and had just a lot of meaningful conversations about what it really means to serve and what benefit we provide being there, not being the most construction savvy people. So APA is definitely a name that if you come to BC, you will hear that everywhere you go. And the other one that stands out to me is For Boston. I personally am not a part of For Boston, but I know many people who were, and you, I believe, apply and are placed or matched with a local organization to do service work throughout the year. And there's also a reflection component where you'd be with a group that meets, I believe, once a week to kind of reflect on your experiences and build fellowship with other people that are also serving on campus.
And to finish that off, and there are many, many others, and we'll keep talking about a couple others, Grace. But for any of you, I think you would have mentioned it by now if you participated in it, but any conversation about service in Boston College does have to involve Pulse, which is the service learning program at BC, which is very popular and has been around for about nearly 50 years at this point. If none of you have done it, I'll pick on you, Grace, if you know, at least because you're the oldest. So I feel like, and we've worked together obviously many times, so I could pick on you a little bit. Can you must have had friends or you know a little bit about Pulse. Can you give people at least the details that you know about?
Yeah, totally. Thank you for reminding me. I'm kind of embarrassed that I forgot about Pulse for a second. So Pulse is this really interesting program. I did not take Pulse, but again, like Chris mentioned, I know many people who did. And it's actually a course that you would take at BC. So I took a version of it called Perspectives, where we have just the academic side, where we take all of our philosophy and theology core at once throughout the whole year. I loved the course. It really let me, I think that Christine mentioned as well, it let me look at religious things through a more like academic lens and through philosophical lens, which I absolutely loved. And so it takes that course and also introduces a service component where, like for Boston, you'd be matched or placed with a service group in the Boston area. And you would serve, I'm not sure the exact hours, but it is a time commitment where you'd have to balance it with your other academic load. but you would go into the city or you travel with other students in your class to this placement and you'd serve alongside your normal coursework. I've only heard amazing things from people that are involved with it. I've heard there's also a lot of different types of service placements as well. I think the classic one people might think of is volunteering at a soup kitchen, which is an option, or tutoring students, or working at a mental health hotline. There is such like a wide array of services you can offer, even people who don't have maybe experience serving, it might be something they're new to. You can take your skills that you already have to offer. Like I'm in Carroll School of Management. So if you're really good at spreadsheets or finances, you can go work somewhere and maybe help people with their finances or offer those services. I get excited about it, but there's just so many options out there that people can kind of find their place at that I think is really, really welcoming and not intimidating at all, which I love.
You did a good job for someone who didn't take Pulse. Well done. And I should mention that as a kid growing up in Boston, I knew kids that were doing Pulse because they came over to my boys club when I was a kid. And they were at my elementary school. So, I see it. I saw it when I was a kid, like firsthand, the outreach of BC students in the community, which is just phenomenal. BC Bigs or for Boston, or so many ways that our students get involved in the city, which is great. And Kelly, I mean, it must be great for you from your perspective that there are so many willing people at Boston College to participate. You talk about Appalachian, you were involved in that for a couple of years. I mean, I thought for spring break, kids were supposed to go to Mexico and lie in a vat of beer. And you get 1,000 kids that get in a van and sleep on a church floor for a week and drive nails through their fingers. Like, it's just amazing that you get that kind of buy-in. Or when we were doing international service projects, the applications that would come in and how people would like mentally pack for those trips and live in community with people and then come back and unpack and spend so much time with each other. I mean, you saw some of the stuff up close. It must be pretty amazing to think that this is a community that can support all those kinds of immersion trips and service programs. I mean, I would think that you probably sit back and say, how do all these kids have the time, the energy, and the effort to want to do it?
Hundreds and hundreds of students giving of their spring break, but as Grace said, of their talents, of their enthusiasm, of an openness to meet a group of random 14 other Boston College students and say, we're going to go to West Virginia. We're going to go to Detroit together. It was really, for me, an inspiring thing to witness and to really guide students through that process, because we're not expecting folks to be ready to serve right now or tomorrow. Service programs and the Pulse experience, these things come with formation, another big word we use at Boston College. So making sure that the educational component is also a part of this experience, learning about what is service and how might that be different from like helping? What are the nuances here of community partnership? What is solidarity? So we're even challenging perhaps some of those preconceived notions about what service is and what I'm giving or doing, but really what is it that I'm entering into relationship and partnership and likely receiving? And I gotta say, Chris, the other best part of this, not only the formation before the trips, hearing all about them, it was students coming back to campus and having those conversations, hearing the inside jokes. Like, Kelly, you'll never believe how much food we ate on that church potluck. It was such a gift to see how students brought that APA experience or any other service immersion experience back to Chestnut Hill. And with that, into their classroom, into their senior thesis, into, oh, I thought I was pre-med, but now I'm really curious about sociology or social work. And so to see how that continued to transform students in their own unique, gifted ways, again, I have the best job in the world and I got a really front row seat, privileged seat to see it.
Again, well said. And it brings me back to Grace, because where I wanted to finish this conversation was how these things do filter back into you. So Grace, you're in the Carroll School of Management. You're supposed to be this hardened, grizzled, spreadsheet-loving business student. And Kelly just described someone who's supposed to now be like, found a new place, and all this service and all these discussions have recentered you. Is that true or false?
I think they work together. I knew this question was coming. Chris loves to ask me about the CSOM and me being still having a soul, as he sometimes says. And it's interesting because I'm thinking about my experience so far working on council for Christian Life Community. And it is true, I do love a good spreadsheet, and being able to kind of use those skills that I've developed studying business to make an organization run more efficiently that will then reach even more students and make even more students feel at home at BC has really been a gift in my time at BC so far. And moving forward, I think my spiritual experiences on campus have really helped me discern what I'm looking for in a career moving on from BC. I am in the business field. I want to do something, related to spreadsheets, related to finance, something like that. And I think my experiences at BC have really shown me that I want to work for a company that will be making an impact in lives in some way. And even if I'm working in a larger organization, how can I in my own life control the way that I'm interacting with the people around me, the way that I'm making decisions? That's something we emphasize a lot in the business school, is making ethical decisions that I think, just goes hand in hand with spirituality and being men and women for others, like Christine mentioned. It's something that I think just works together really well. That isn't a connection you wouldn't make thinking, finance and theology, but it really does work. And I've had a couple years to kind of see how they're intertwined, and I'm very grateful for that.
And I'll finish with you, Christine. We talked about some pretty heavy stuff. We talked about like finding fulfillment, finding God in all things. We talked about some heavy duty stuff. And there are some people on this webinar that are like all about it. And there are some people that might be like, I just want to like get a red Solo cup and like be against the wall and like being on it. Like tell people that it's not going to be so bad. Tell people this is going to be okay. That these kind of discussions happen organically and gradually and naturally, and then you get such fulfillment and enjoyment out of them as you go along. Again, we just talked about this transformation that some people go through, and they really do. But for some people watching this, they're probably just been overwhelmed by the concept of having that transformation happen. Tell them it's going to be okay, Christine.
Okay, I promise that it's going to be okay, because yes, it is a transformation, but it's a gradual one. This is not to say that on the first day of classes, like I doubt, or if they do, they're very bold. No one's going to come up to you and say, oh, like, it's so nice to meet you. Tell me if you believe in God. Like, no one's going to say that to you. They want to like build a relationship where then you can ask those kind of questions. So that what you're saying, Chris, really speaks to student life way more than it does beyond any sort of faith background or how they identify like with a religion one way or another. It speaks to how people are here at BC, and it's that we want to connect. And of course, having those kind of conversations, one that will lead to transformation, have to start at a kind of a baseline level. So people don't necessarily dive in head first. That's why we have things like John mentioned, like the student involvement fair, where you can see from like out on Stokes Lawn, a part of campus, where a bunch of tables will be set up and you can see different campus ministry events. You can see service organizations, and you can just kind of walk on by. You can throw your name on an email list if you want to, or you can ask those people straight up, what's your view of God? You kind of find all ranges of those levels of conversation, but students engage in them. They're willing to engage in them. They love to engage in them. So it's going to be okay. It's going to be totally okay. It's going to be more than okay.
It's going to be more than okay. I think that's the way to finish it off, Christine, John, Grace, Kelly. This has been fantastic. All of you have put your email addresses in your little video box. So they welcome and I welcome these conversations to continue. I know there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking at colleges, and a lot of you have done the research about this college. These are the kind of things that are important to know about our culture, our community, and our vision, and what we expect, but what we hope for what will happen to you during your college years, if it's here or somewhere else. This kind of transformation, these kind of big moments, and we don't want you to miss them. So let the conversations continue. I want to thank all of you for spending some time with us tonight. I want to thank Jackie Geller for producing this. And next week, we're going to have another great one. We're going to move into the academic realm and talk about academics because that's a place, but this is a good place to start when we're talking about Boston College, what our mission is and what's important. So for all of you that joined us, thank you so much from our panel. We'll see you around campus very soon. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Thanks, everybody. Good night.